Bloodborne is one of the most suspenseful stealth rhythm games that I have ever played, and I know that doesn't make much sense, but in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at the game design techniques that actually make this possible. So if you're looking for a deep dive into exactly how Bloodborne works,
well, you've come to the right place.
So spoiler warning from this point onwards, guys, and welcome to the Anatomy of Bloodborne. Our story follows you, a newly awoken hunter prowling the streets of Yharnam, a city once built upon the grounds of grand opulence until secrets uncovered deep below the city's bowels drove its citizens to lunacy and lycanthropy. You have been sent to cleanse these streets of this madness and to uncover the mystery of what has caused Yharnam's fall from grace. So, Fromsoftware games are a little bit infamous for how hands-off they are. The story being delivered through notes on the ground and item descriptions that the player is expected to piece together themselves. And the same for gameplay, they just slap you on the ass and say, "Good luck, mate." And this can be a little bit intimidating for newer players, but I'm here to tell you that Bloodborne has a genius, unseen underbelly that it uses to invisibly guide and teach its players through its impeccable level design. And I'm going to show you exactly how it does this. I actually teach level design at a university in England. No, seriously. And I'm about to share some of that knowledge with you. So when designing any level, the purest thing the developers should be aiming for is to guide and teach the player invisibly, or non-intrusively, so the players don't even know that it's happening. And Bloodborne's first area, Central Yharnam, is a wonderful example of this. Okay, before we get into the really heavy level design stuff, let's start with the basics. The holy grail of level design is to teach a player how to play the game using only the placement of objects and enemy design without needing to use any text to literally tell the player what to do. You want to give them the freedom to figure it out for themselves. And a lot of people who haven't played any Fromsoftware games assume that their levels are hard to navigate and understand due to their non-linear and twisting level designs, but this is a misconception. Because Fromsoftware are extremely careful to invisibly guide their players throughout their games, and one of the many ways that they do this is through item placements and non-diegetic lighting. Non-diegetic lighting is light that doesn't come from inside the game world itself, but instead it has been placed there by the developers to help guide you in certain directions. Consider it a form of highlighting. This is called chiaroscuro, or the contrast between light and dark used to guide the player's eyes in certain directions. This is done all over Central Yharnam and can even be seen in the game's lootable items. Then once the player's eyes has been drawn to these items, the specific placement of them is then used to subtly guide the player throughout the world to easily missed interactables, paths of interest, or even hidden challenges. But even these seemingly superfluous enemies are designed to teach you specific mechanics invisibly. Like this big boy, for example. What do you think he is here to teach us? Well, the key traits of this boy is he's a lot slower than most of the other enemies, but he's a lot more powerful to match, and he can't be staggered by your melee weapon. He doesn't like broccoli, and his area is claustrophobic and cluttered, demanding you keep your distance since dodging is so difficult. So what does it want you to do? Well, that's right, gun. The design of this boy does everything to try and encourage you to shoot him, and if you do this mid-attack animation, it staggers him, leaving him open to a visceral parry attack for major damage. And the game has just taught you how to parry attacks with the careful balance of the enemy's attack animations and the level design he's found in. So we've just seen how things like lighting, item placements, and enemy design can separately be used to teach you how to play invisibly. But there's no better example of all of these being used together with Central Yharnam's first big, unavoidable challenge. At this point, we've been slowly introduced to enemies in lumbering, slow-moving packs, and they've been pretty simple to manage with. And then you stumble across this, an obstacle of gargantuan proportion. A horde of madmen, flanked by gunmen on either side, a pit of despair that you have no hope in. Ow!
Oh, there's stairs here, mate.
Thanks, mate. The developers want you to turn around and notice these stairs, and this boy makes sure of that. You are then guided down this walkway that runs alongside the bonfire, and once you get to this point, you hit a trigger volume. A trigger volume is a kind of invisible box that developers use to make something happen if the player character walks inside it, and in this case it causes a pack of enemies down at the bonfire to be alerted and funneled up these stairs so you can fight them one-on-one, splitting the horde of enemies up into smaller, more manageable chunks, allowing the player to finally overcome what did seem like an insurmountable challenge. This is something called manufactured ludonarrative. It's a sequence of scripted events that will make the player feel that they had an authentic experience that was unique to them, but in fact it was all handcrafted by the developers, and this is only really possible when using non-intrusive level designs that the player is not going to notice when they happen. But while these design principles are used so impeccably throughout the entire game, they're also being used to trick you. Just as you get comfortable, these same techniques are used to lure you into traps and ambushes. Enemies stalk in packs and will punish you for the tiniest mistakes, but the game does give you the tools necessary to overcome these challenges. Bloodborne's world is oppressive and unforgiving. The slightest mistakes you make will spiral you into a pit of unrelenting punishment, but it doesn't want you to cower behind a shield and wait, it wants you to match this aggression, and one of the ways it encourages this is with its trick weapons. These tools of devastation can quickly switch forms to be useful in a range of situations, like a single-handed short sword that can transform into a devastating hammer for crowd control, or an axe that can transform into a slightly longer axe. Each one of these weapons is incredibly fast, and if you do attempt to change modes while you're already attacking, you'll be rewarded with a powerful combo attack, which means you never need to back out of this fight, keeping the flow of combat ever moving forward. But to match this aggressive offense, you'll need a proactive defensive tool to keep you alive in these fights. For example, say Johnny Big Balls here has just slapped you for 6.
I've got big balls.
Yeah, we know. If you react quick enough, attacking enemies shortly after being hit will allow you to reclaim some of that missing health you just lost. And this is so unbelievably genius, to reinforce players to push forward after making a mistake, rather than backpedaling and attempting to just spam all of their healing items. And they have seriously nailed this healing design. But it's not perfect. Okay, after the perfection that is the health reclaiming mechanic, what the hell were they thinking with blood vials? Blood vials are the main healing item in Bloodborne. You can carry up to 20 and they heal really quickly and efficiently. They're really good, but once you use all of them, they're gone. What? You then have to go and farm them off of enemy corpses or spend a resource that you lose on death to buy more. And see, the problem is this is a negative feedback loop. Feedback loops come in two distinct flavors, positive and negative. A positive feedback loop is when a player who is already doing well is rewarded with things to help them do even better. Kill streaks in Call of Duty are a perfect example of this, and a negative feedback loop is when a player who is failing is given more restrictions to make them fail harder. And blood vials are a negative feedback loop. If you're already struggling so much that you have completely run out of healing items, making it so that you have to go and fight more of those monsters that you are struggling with just accentuates this problem. Consider this form of healing a counter for how many mistakes you can actually make during combat. This system then punishes its most vulnerable players by making them have less chances to make these mistakes again. I just don't believe that this type of negative feedback loop belongs in a single player game, even one as difficult as Bloodborne that is designed specifically to be punishing. The core design of this game and the series is that the areas and bosses are meant to be repeated as you learn and get better. Forcing the player to stop attempting what they are trying to overcome and make them go and farm items just breaks the otherwise impeccable flow of this game. Actually, what do you guys think? Does this belong in a single player experience? How did you find it personally? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to discuss this with you and get other people's points of view. But if I'm being perfectly honest with myself, if you've got a good sense of rhythm, you're not going to need lots of blood vials, because at its core, Bloodborne is a rhythm game. No, I'm serious. A lot of people assume that Fromsoftware games are just about reading visual signifiers and timing your dodges to those visual cues. But the other side to this coin that is often forgotten is how it subconsciously guides the player through the rhythmic timings of its soundtrack. When talking about rhythm in music, there are two basic ideas that you need to understand. The pulse, which is the beat that you tap your foot to while it's playing, and the time signature, which is the number of those beats between each strong sound or accents in the music. And in Bloodborne, the developers have geniusly timed the boss's string of attacks to be timed to these accents, using the rhythm of the music itself to guide the player on when to dodge and have opportunities to attack themselves. And Father Gascoigne is a perfect example of this in motion. This song, The Hunter by Yharnam, is in 4, meaning there are 4 beats between each accent of the song, and this is one of the easiest time signatures for humans to recognise. It's an even number, it's symmetrical, and it's one of the first things you hear in your entire life. It's the pulse of the human heart. So humans are keenly attuned to fall into this rhythm. Father Gascoigne's attacks are then timed with these pulses. He will initiate his string of attacks to line up on these accents, and once the player has fallen into this rhythm, it allows for them to subconsciously predict when attacks are actually going to be coming. And it's not just the rhythm that sets the tone and pace of the fight. Every single element of this music is designed to make the fight feel a certain way. For example, this pulse or beat of the music is not present at the beginning. And this allows the player to get their footing and bearings before the strong march locks them into this duel. Then, once Father Gascoigne transforms into his more bestial form, the music's tempo increases and speeds up to match his new, more frantic form. And this kind of musical design is done throughout the game with most of the game's bosses, but just like with everything designed by Fromsoftware, it is also used to trick you once you are comfortable. Some compositions are made in an odd time signature, like the Blood-Starved Beast, which is in 5/4. This makes attacks that land on the beat feel like they are moving and unpredictable, matching perfectly to this creature's design. And this kind of musical composition is just genius and takes what is usually designed to be background noise and forms it into a mechanical aid that accompanies the narrative and gameplay subconsciously. It's like a fine wine. But only boss fights have music. So outside of these arenas, what other design techniques must be used to set the tone of Yharnam's streets? Yharnam's streets are crawling with malice, an endless parade of horrors. Frightened locals board themselves up, offering kind words of advice to a doomed hunter. Alright, every single element of how Yharnam is designed perfectly compounds to make this nightmare feel alive, as the world is ever changing as it and you slip further into this madness. And this brings me to one of Bloodborne's greatest achievements, how it mechanicalized madness. As you travel through Yharnam, your character witnesses unimaginable horrors. This is then contextualized into the currency insight. Your character is gaining insight into how the world truly is by witnessing the horrors that Yharnam harbors. And as your insight and knowledge of this true world increases, Yharnam begins to change. The monsters of the world morph into their true unhindered forms, becoming more numerous and stronger. You start to see things stalking on the spires, watching you and your descent into this insanity. This perfectly contextualizes this kind of eldritch horror and madness in a way that I have never seen before, driven entirely by the player's actions and choices in exploration. It is truly the greatest gameplay depiction of madness I have ever seen, and a beautiful addition to the atmosphere and tone that's been so carefully crafted using all of the techniques I have covered in this episode. All of these systems I have covered in today's episode help to non-intrusively guide the player throughout Bloodborne's world and subconsciously assist them in their toughest situations, but I have only scratched the surface. This episode was designed to be an introduction to these concepts, and I intend to expand on them and go into a lot more detail in the Anatomy of Dark Souls series. So if that is something you would like to see, please let me know in the comments that you are interested, and with any topics that you would like to see me cover. Thank you so much for watching, guys. guys, I really hope you enjoyed this one. And the next episode is going to be the Anatomy of Half-Life Alyx, with a deep dive into immersion systems in VR, 3D sound, and some other surprises. So if you do enjoy these episodes and you want to see more of them, please consider joining this wonderful team of people, of our YouTube members and patrons. Thank you so much for the support, mate. I'll see you in the next one.